you've gone so deep in all these things and provided so much information out there. But I've had people say, now it's too much info. Where do I start? And I think foodscaping is kind of like a really nice way to kind of wedge in, because you don't have to have an orchard. If you're going to plant a tree, plant a fruit tree.
There you go.
Simple as that.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the show. I've got a guest that I've chatted with infinitely almost on Instagram, Chia-Ming Ro, also known as Coastal Homestead, just up the coast here in California, in Los Angeles. I'm in San Diego. So I feel like we've talked so much, but now we're actually speaking using our voices, which is kind of new for us.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I've seen you and I've heard you on screen, but this back and forth is like, this is kind of cool. We should do this more.
Yeah, welcome. So you have an interesting background because, we'll get into exactly what you're doing today, but I'm almost more interested in what you were doing before this, from finance to foodscaping, right? So what's your background?
So I actually was in finance and accounting for 17 years. I worked in strategy and anything that helped businesses run better and smarter, more efficiently. I love being a helper. So this was a great role for me up until it wasn't. And I think I felt unfulfilled in that profession. I was only helping other people run their businesses and the state of the world. Like, where is our food coming from? All the things that we've witnessed the last few years really inspired me to dig deep in what else can I do? But how do I not have to start all the way over, do all the education, the formal route of everything? So I kind of stumbled into it.
Mm-hmm. Where did it start, the transition? So you're in finance and accounting and strategy. Did you just hard quit the job and try to go full bore gardening, or did you take steps? How did that work for you?
So that's a great question. And because I'm in finance, I lived in numbers, right? And I needed to be able to see how I would be able to replace my income and be still comfortable, because I think there's a lot of DIY out there. I couldn't understand, how could you actually build a sustainable business in gardening? And it all kind of started when I redid my front lawn. I scrapped the lawn, I put raised beds in, and during that time was when everything was shut down. We couldn't talk to anybody, but we could garden. And I remember I was outside gardening, and the neighbor walked by, and they asked what I was doing. They asked if I was doing that for a client, but it was actually my house. So then the light bulb went off, and wait, I could do this for other people. Let's look into it. And because I also had that financial background, I built financial models of businesses. So I built one for myself, and I built a runway of, okay, this is the X amount that I make in my salary. How am I going to get there? How am I going to make that money? Is it through design and install? What is that? And I gave myself 9 months, because in 9 months I was turning 40. And so I was like, okay, if I can't make this work, I'm out. I'm going to just close up, and I'm going to go back to my Excel spreadsheets. And I somehow made it work. And here I am. 9 months after I started, I went full time, and that was in April 2021. And now, almost 2 years later, full time.
Yeah, you're coming up on the 2-year anniversary. So just so I know for sure, the way you did it is you did do a hard quit, gave yourself a 9-month runway to make it work. And if it wasn't, you'd go back, but you didn't do like a transitionary?
I did a transitionary.
Okay,
I went hard. I went full time for 9 months of my job. And then at night, I built my business.
Got it. Okay, cool. So you were probably at 12 hours a day or more at least, right?
Easily.
Yeah.
But that was a time when everything was shut down. We were working remotely. Mm-hmm. So there was no commute time, right? So that was squeezed in. There was no other hobbies. So that became a thing. And so I created content, and that was a big part of it.
How did you get your first client, maybe your first 5 clients? Like, how did that work for you?
The very first one that was not a friend and that was actually paid was the girl who cut my hair was cutting someone else's hair, and they just said, oh, we need some help making this patio better and prettier, but I don't know how to do it and I need help. And so she connected us. And it was just because we shared the same girl who cut our hair. And it's this word of mouth that's really interesting. And they went on my Instagram and they saw that I actually was doing gardening and all these things, and they brought me over. A lot of it I actually have to credit to Instagram because I was creating content. I was showing the gardening that I was doing at home. And so a friend would talk about that I was installing, I was designing, and then they would say my name. And then there was a circular kind of, you probably see this in your side.
Feedback loop going on.
Yeah, it's like this really interesting loop. I treated Instagram originally only to be kind of like my free billboard, because when you're starting, you got nothing, right?
You got nothing. Yeah, no one cares about you. No one knows who you are. Yeah.
And it's just you and yourself in your garden. And so you're like, well, let's just see what happens. So it happened very organically that way.
What's cool to me is, especially with this type of business, and I think we always talk about practical gardening tips on this show, but I think it's important sometimes to highlight businesses or ways that one can engage in the world of plants that actually is monetarily sustainable, because there's just so much interest here. People working in garden centers or consulting or doing garden installs. It sounds like this style of business has become popular. We've had Nicole Burke of Gardenary on the show. Obviously, she's been a huge light in that movement. Did you work with her at all, or did you take inspiration from her? And what would you say to someone who's like kind of saying, I want to be Chia-Ming now? How do I actually do that?
I actually you also had another guest, Matt Lebon, the Foodscaping Summit. Mm-hmm. And I actually spoke at that recently. And I would say for most that no matter what you want to do is to start with a plan. Just like, it's just like gardening when you start a garden. The first thing you want to do is go buy the plant. And that is the last thing you should be doing, right? Now that we are seasoned gardeners, and that's the same thing with deciding that you want to be a foodscaper, is doing the learning, investing in your education, investing in yourself, and understanding what you like and don't like to do. That is probably the biggest tip I would give. And I definitely researched a lot. I looked at all the people, like Nicole is already doing it very well in Texas with Rooted Garden. And then there are Seattle farm company, I think, Backyard Farm Company. There's so many that are creating gorgeous gardens, but they're established. They're like 5-10 years more. And you're like, whoa, how do I go from nothing to that? And you start small. My very first garden in 2020 was literally a small patio with 2 planters. I think I charged $750. What I learned from that, I will not do patios because you have to haul everything, right?
Sure.
That's not me. And in LA, you park far. You have to pull all of that in, plants. So how many trips is that going to be, right?
And I think who even knows? Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, even in your own garden where you are, like shoveling that. And then there's the dirt. But in an apartment, you can't leave a trail of dirt. You can't leave that. And you can't just like hose it down either. So these are the things that, as a foodscaper, I think you have to really think about. This isn't your own garden, right? Yeah. You can't leave a mess.
Yeah, I think to me, I would maybe leave someone with a similar kind of thought. And it's that, when anything starts, it's sort of trite to relate it to the growth of a plant, but like you plant a seed and you have these 2 seed leaves that are sort of in there, the cotyledons, and then of course it grows. And if you think about a tree, like it's still going to grow from a seed, and eventually the compound growth of that tree with all the leaves on it, every leaf is a new energy sort of generator. It's weird to see what actually comes out of that seed. It almost seems unbelievable when you just are looking at the seed. And it's kind of the same way where, you're 2 years deep into your journey. And if you today looks back, at you 2 years ago, you probably wouldn't have believed it'd be at this point, right? And so like starting small and just like taking the right actions and compounding from there, it really makes a crazy difference. We hear a lot about landscaping. I mean, there's landscape architects, there's landscape designers. It's a very common term. We hear a little bit less about the term foodscaping. And I know we talked with Matt Liebon on the show. If you're an old, longtime listener of the show, you've probably remembered those episodes. And you just spoke at that summit, and this is sort of a thing that you do for a living, Chia-Ming. So do you mind just sort of explaining why foodscaping?
Personally, gardening is fun and it can be easy, but there are so many plants, right? I don't like pokey things, so I don't want to go into succulents and install and get poked, right? And if I'm going to put this effort, I want to have it be very efficient and productive. So for me, I do food and I do cut flowers because I want to make sure that every effort, all the dollars spent, comes back and I get something else. So that's kind of the short of it.
Yeah, and I think to me, landscaping, let's hope at least, landscaping as a term gets either broadened or the term changes to something like foodscaping, because, I've seen a bunch of videos on YouTube when I get obsessed and go down like a YouTube rabbit hole of someone who's created what looks to be just an ornamental landscape, except for the fact that every single thing is edible, like sweet potatoes as the shrubs, like that sort of approach. And I'm like, yeah, it's definitely a little more effort, a little more knowledge, but at least you're planting something edible and or I guess ornamental with the cut flower idea as well. To me, just the idea of getting some use out of it outside of just the appearance, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think there's a lot of fear behind growing food. And I think that's where your channel is really instrumental in helping the beginner start, right? And then you've gone so deep in all these things and provided so much information out there. But I've had people say, now it's too much info. Where do I start? And I think foodscaping is kind of like a really nice way to kind of wedge in, because you don't have to have an orchard. If you're going to plant a tree, plant a fruit tree, right? And it's
there you go.
Simple as that.
How do you do this with your clientele? Like, is this something that you're pitching like as the service? Hey, this is like a foodscape garden, or how does that work?
So when people come to me, they already want to grow food. And how I kind of consult is we go on site, we measure, we talk about the sun, all the basics for actual like a successful garden, no matter what you plant. But then we kind of ask the client, how many people are you growing for, right? And then what are your expectations from this garden? Do you want it to be a dedicated garden space? Some people like that. They like it organized. This is their patio that they're going to entertain people, and over there is the garden. Then other people want it to be like especially in California, here in LA, it's an indoor-outdoor feel. So then we'll have this as a really nice patio. We don't really want to go in ground, so let's put citrus trees in nice pretty pots next to your couch that's out there. And so it then becomes an outdoor living space, which is what I love to do. So that's kind of how it kind of works. They already come. So I do think, like you mentioned it earlier, there is this undercurrent wave of adopting and wanting to grow food. And I think the foodscaping, it's really just getting the word out there that you don't have to pick an ornamental tree, right? You can pick whatever you want.
I think the thing that's interesting too, especially since, you're in LA, I'm in San Diego, and neither of us are in a more rural area where perhaps there's more space to do this in general. But also, there's the blend of your life and your garden is a little bit tighter in spaces that you're working in, I can only assume, and certainly for myself as well. So it seems like it's a nice way to get someone to buy into this foodscaping idea, is like, hey, look, yes, it's edible, but also it looks beautiful right next to your patio where you have wine with your friends on a Saturday night. So there's no detraction by switching to the edible version.
Yeah, it's really just integrating and actually making it a lifestyle, right? And I think we've both done that. And our spaces, we've probably jam-packed as much as we can, and we try new things
I'm definitely,
every year.
I don't think I'm the lifestyle example here, because I go way too hard, but I'm trying to actually make it look more ornament or more aesthetic, blended into the life a little more, instead of it looking like a mini farm in my backyard,
Yeah, but that pond area, I think you've done a good way of kind of integrating that, and there's like seating, and so you're sitting inside a farm, or like, bringing that urban farm life. And I think a lot of, I guess, city folk right? They want a piece of it. And they're afraid that they have to go big and go hard to get that, when really you can start with one box. And so I try to meet clients right where they are. Like, realistically, if you have a full-time job, if you have kids, how much time do you really have to dedicate to that? And
it's like making sure that you don't fail out in your first year or two. To me, it seems most important, rather than like, oh, I grew enough food for 40% of my groceries. Like, let's get to that in year 2 or 3. Year one, let's get some lemons, let's get some herbs, and you're good to go.
Let's get excited,
Yeah.
And then that's where I think consulting and bringing someone on to do this initial setup for you really helps, because that's the hardest part, right? Is knowing where the sun goes, knowing what soil you need to do, like use or amend.
Yeah. There's a world in which you almost don't need a consultant, but that was the world of the past, or hopefully the future, where it seems like we're in this middle stage where a lot of us just forgot all this knowledge. And then there's some people, like the wise sages, that have learned it and are like passing it on. Because it's like, for me, I've been working out a lot more recently. And yeah, there was a time when I was younger where I was way more plugged into like exercise science and all that. That time is not here right now. And so I hired a trainer, and I just go in and I do whatever he tells me to do. But at the same time, I'm saying like, okay, well, why are you making me do this many sets and reps? Why am I resting this much? And I'm just asking him all the questions so I can get the knowledge back into my brain. And yeah, maybe there's a time in the future where I just do it on my own because I actually know what I'm doing. But again, that time's not there yet. I've like given myself the grace of this first year to just be like, hey, I'll just sort of apprentice under this trainer and learn, and as long as I don't quit, then I'm good. Yeah.
That's definitely the way it is. It's like, what I've seen is there's the desire, and then there's the disconnect of overwhelm, and then there's the quit. And so I try to go right there with the overwhelm and say, hold on, you want this big garden? Let's break it up into pieces, bite-sized pieces. Yeah. Then once they're excited, I have people telling me, their moms telling me, can you please stop her from doing more? Like, she's got too many plants. So
yeah. That's how you know you succeeded, though, is the thing. That's amazing.
I just opened the gate, like, that's all.
They walk through. You hear it all the time. I don't have a green thumb, or I do have a black thumb. And, if you've listened to the podcast for a while, I don't really believe either of those statements are true. I think you probably share a similar philosophy, yeah?
Oh, absolutely. That is the one thing that almost all clients tell me is I have either no green thumb or I have a black thumb, and I kill all the plants.
Yeah, I hear it. I mean, the one that I hear that I guess before I had a deeper understanding of plants, I would say, how's that possible? Is that I can't even keep a succulent alive, right?
Oh,
and then I go, well, how are you growing the succulent? And I had a friend of mine, she was like, indoors, and I water it every other day. And I'm like, okay, well, that's exactly what it doesn't want. So makes total sense why you can't keep it alive, But yeah, I mean, this is a thing. It sounds like you grew up gardening. I didn't. And so I had to build this, I guess, from, an adult age on. For you, when you made the transition from finance into your business and gardening more, did you already have that intuition, or have you developed it like to a higher degree now?
I think even higher now, but I'm going to give you the trick, or the mindset almost, that I think will really unlock it. And you touched upon it without calling it something when you talked about your friend and the succulent. Gardening is like dating.
Oh.
Okay. And if you can think of it like that, I can see, you see the wheels, right? The wheels are turning. How is this like like dating?
I'm trying to figure it out.
Exactly. Like, if you understand the plant profile of a succulent, it's like a dating profile. Everyone has a profile. Your likes, dislikes, what you look like. Guess what? So do plants. And if you can understand that concept, you want to grow a specific succulent. Well, guess what? Not all the succulents like the same thing. Some like sun, some don't like sun. Some are tropical, like the dragon fruit that you and I both love growing, right? That one needs to be fed a lot, needs a lot of water, not what you think of in a different cactus. And this is how I try to teach my clients, it's if you can relate this like plant life with real life, it makes it really easy. Another one that you may like is with container gardening. So I know that's kind of where you had a really, a lot of containers. You started with that. Just like people, like when you go to Disneyland, you don't want to go on Splash Mountain in the morning or at night because you're going to be wet all night and it's going to be cold. If you're smart and and you have this intuition, you've been there once or somebody told you, you go to Splash Mountain in the morning. So if you're wet, you dry up and it's okay. Your shoes aren't like sloshy and gross all day. So it's kind of that, if you think about it in a way that you can understand and it's relatable, makes a lot of sense. Like plants don't want their roots to be waterlogged. Same thing, just like you in this Splash Mountain example.
Yeah. It's funny how many different metaphors there are to relate to plant care, because I've never really thought about it from the dating profile perspective and a plant profile, but it does make total sense, right? I've often thought, if I was the plant and I had the characteristics of the plant, what would I want, I guess, is a way that I've sort of personified it. I've also thought about just where'd the plant come from? What was the environment like where it came from? What can I do to like sort of replicate that as best as possible? And then just realizing, I guess, also like the inputs that plants need. Like there's only so many. It's water, light, air, nutrition. And then they all have different sort of ratios of when they want that. Or just understanding how a plant grows. Like are you growing it through its whole life cycle from seed to tomato, right? Seed to fruit, or seed to leaf with a lettuce. It's very different, right? And we grow lettuce halfway through its life cycle, then cut it off and eat it. Whereas tomatoes, we grow the whole thing. And yeah, I mean, it's just, to me, it also just reps, just killing and growing and killing, and growing and killing. So long as you understand why you killed a plant, hopefully you wouldn't kill it the same way, at least the next time. So you can at least kill it in a new way. And then eventually you run out of ways to kill the plant and you're like, okay, well, here you go. I actually have a harvest.
Yeah, and you figured it out. And so like you mentioned it in a previous episode, was that we are in smaller spaces. We don't have this like acreage to grow on, right? So when you grow intensively, another metaphor for you could be, and I use this as well, is if you set a table for your friends to come eat, right? Yeah, that I say is kind of like setting the bed, the garden bed. If you put a lot of food there and there's a lot of people, everyone's happy, right? But if you only put a little bit of food, but there's so many people, you're going to run out. And then you're going to have to replenish more often, right? So it's kind of the same thing with plants and their bed. They're sharing a table.
I think to me also, just once you start understanding the principles, you just flex them based on the situation you're presented with. If you look at, let's say, the dragon fruit and you see a couple different problems and you go, what could this be? But it got to 28 degrees Fahrenheit, then you know that it's probably related to a temperature thing and maybe not watering or fertilizer or light. So it just sort of, to me, that's what the intuition comes out in. It's experience over time plus some level of like the base knowledge of how plants in general want to be cared for.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the profile, right? And I think you kind of have that on your blog where it's like how much sun is needed, how much space, like what kind of watering, So once you understand that the basics, then you can kind of, like you said, flex. I think of a DJ's little board that they have.
Oh, yeah, turntable? Yeah.
Yes, like on the turntable, there's like, I don't know all the things. My brother-in-law is a DJ though, but you turn up and down depending on how you want this to sound. And it's kind of the same for plants. More sun, less sun, things like that. In our area where it's like almost too hot, because I'm in 10B, but coastal, and you're also, I think, similar, right?
Yeah, I'm 10B coastal as well.
Yeah. So the sun can get a little overbearing sometimes, especially for my clients inland. So they can actually grow in part sun and still have a good harvest because they're protecting it from the scorching sun. Full sun is the answer all the time, depending on where you are.
Depending on where you are, exactly. Yeah, and then you have to remember, and this will be my closing thought here. I think I've said it probably many times on the podcast. You have to remember, like all the plants we're growing, most of them, especially in the annual world, didn't evolve where you live. So you're sort of forcing something to grow where it kind of maybe would prefer somewhere else. And so, yeah, like lettuce in the summer, in inland California is just going to have a really hard time. So you're going to have to modify the environment quite a bit to make it happen. or just accept that maybe that's a winter crop for you and you're not going to grow it in the summer. So there's a lot of different elements there. If you've listened to the show for a while, you know that I am no stranger to trying to grow the weirdest plants that I can, and sometimes to hilarious failure, such as the giant cabbage that I've tried to grow 3 times and actually killed 3 times. Not really killed, but just failed to grow. That'd be my cope way of dealing with my own failure there. But Chia-Ming, you've also kind of gotten into some interesting exotic edible plants, and I'm curious, what's in the garden right now that you're excited about?
So right now I have turmeric. I have 5 kinds of turmeric. And why? I don't know. Just because it's cool. It's different colors. Yeah. And I just want to stretch my knowledge. I've grown turmeric. I've grown ginger. So let's try all the different kinds. There's like a black one, a Hawaiian one. I think there's like a pink one. So all the colors, love it. I have to try it. So that's currently in the ground. But I have a lot of trees. I think I'm at 35 trees of different stages. Now, let me kind of set the stage for you. My house is on a 5,000 square foot lot with my house on it. And so I actually don't have a lot of growing space. And I actually have your birdies beds on concrete. And I've gone with the tall ones just because you have to remember, you need to provide all the good nutrients and all the soil and for the roots, right? So when I saw that you had the extra tall birdies beds, done. And then I put a big arch on there, and I can grow pretty much anything on concrete.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen you tag me in a bunch of the stuff you've ended up growing over those arches, and it's just cool to see all the different things that you've done. Turmeric, I've done one variety of. Ginger, I think I've done 2 different varieties. One is some sort of like pinkish type that I got from Hawaii. And I had a lot of success. Turmeric I had a little bit less success with. Obviously, I've been doing dragon fruit for a while. I have 6 varieties of that. Actually 8. Now that I think about it, I actually do have 8. One of them is a chimera. So it's 2 genetics on the same plant, which is kind of really weird. Not even, not like a graft. Like the plant itself has 2 sets, which is really weird. But with the addition of the greenhouse that just came in this past week, I'm really excited to get in some weirder edibles, like tropical style stuff that I just couldn't grow even in 10B. It just would have been very difficult to grow. So I'm thinking maybe trying to grow a vanilla orchid, trying to grow some weird carnivorous stuff. I know that's not edible, but at least those things eat things.
Yeah,
so
they're going to be eating. Are you going to feed them grubs? Will they eat grubs? I wonder.
I think like if it was a pitcher plant, I think you could throw a grub in there, no problem.
Ew.
But Venus flytrap probably wouldn't be able to handle it. And there's some things I want to grow, like the sundews or the drosera. I really want to grow in there because they look amazing, and then they also can just capture all the little gnats that are inevitably going to be in the greenhouse. So it's like a natural pest prevention little move. But yeah, I mean, here's a question I have for you. I know we've both grown loofah. I think you've grown loofah, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever eat it though? Because I haven't eaten it yet.
Yeah, I have. Like it's a Chinese. I'm Taiwanese background, and we've grown up eating it. It's okay. It's not one of my favorites, and so loofah has such a long grow period, right? So you really have to get that timing right. And I actually think because we're both coastal, we don't get hot enough for it, and
not really. Yeah, not really.
For it to be really happy. But I will tell you, another kind of fun, cool one is bitter melon. And I grew a ton of that last year, accidentally. It just was so happy in this coastal, not too hot, not too cold environment. And it looks cool, but you gotta like bitter melon. I don't understand, like the elders, they all go crazy for it. My mother-in-law would like take my bitter melon and she would dry it and she makes tea. Supposedly a lot of health benefits
Apparently
for diabetics and stuff. But oof.
I think I had bitter melon as a kid because for Filipinos, it's also a vegetable that we eat.
Yeah.
And I want to say my grandfather made it for us maybe once or twice. I don't recall because I probably was too young to know what I was even eating at that point in time. I don't think I've had it in my adult life yet. I am trying to grow it this year. So I guess we'll have to see. Maybe there's a particular way of preparing it that makes it a little bit more palatable. Maybe it's just something that you either grew up with it or you didn't. I don't know. Because, Yeah, I don't know. It just seems like there's so many plants that are good to eat. Unless you love it, it's like, why force yourself?
Yeah,
But also just the love of the grow. Maybe it's just a fun plant to grow. It looks cool. So I kind of want to grow it just for that.
it is. And I actually have, I think, 5 different seed types of bitter
Oh,
melon,
wow.
like from white to green, like all the in-betweens. And it's just
Yeah.
so cool. I think that family, like the cucumber, that family is my favorite to grow. So that arch is going to have bitter melon, cucumbers, and I rarely grow the same thing every year because I want to try something new. Even if it is a cucumber, I want to try a different one. But this year, I'm going to be doing the Row 7 center cut squash.
Oh, yeah. You're going to love that.
Yeah, I did last year.
Yeah.
And that is one of the few that I will happily and decide to grow on purpose again. Because it was so good. Is there something that you like no longer grow?
In the weird category or just in general?
Just in general.
So we're about to release a video, I think today, about things that we're not growing this season at least. So I'm not going to say I'm never going to grow these again, but like for me, I'm kind of over turnips right now. And I just don't really care about them this year. I am actually weirdly not over radishes. I really enjoy them again. So the larger radishes that you can kind of thin slice on a mandolin and throw on salads or like, chicken tacos or something like that. To me, I'm all about that now. But turnips, not yet, or at least not this season. I think I gave loofah, I did grow it last year, but I didn't give it as much attention, I suppose. And this year, maybe it won't make it into the rotation. Maybe I'll just grow bitter melon or something different in that family instead. So yeah, I don't know. What about you? Anything you're just sort of over?
Zucchini.
You and everyone else, I guess, right?
I'll grow center cut and eat center cut all day, but zucchini, I'm done.
Yeah.
It just, where we are, we get too much powdery mildew.
Yeah.
So do you have like a wish list fruit tree or anything like that?
So yeah, I mean, I would say weirdly, this isn't even a wish list. I could grow it. I just kind of don't want to on the property. Would be macadamia.
Oh.
I have a friend who grows macadamia. He lives in a little bit in East County in San Diego. So I guess it's a little bit better, but he has an amazing macadamia tree. It's like 35 feet tall, came with the property, and it just rains down macadamia. But number one, it would take probably a decade for it to get to, production level unless I bought a big tree. And number two, then there's the processing of it. But I just have fond memories. There was a family friend my brother and I used to go visit. And when my parents were visiting with them, we'd go up to their macadamia tree and pick and crack them and eat them. And it was just so delish. So to me, I think any sort of nut tree would be really fun to grow.
You could do almonds, I guess.
Yeah, I could do almonds. Cashews would be interesting and fun.
Oh, I mean, they look cool.
If you got they look crazy. If I had more space, which who knows, maybe that day comes, I don't think there's a limit to what I would try to grow. So it'd be like the weirdest farm ever, like one of everything,
Yeah. I want all the tropicals. That's what I want.
Yeah, me too. That's what I'm hoping the greenhouse gets me.
Have you seen the Yavoticaba? Is that how you say it?
Oh, yeah. I think, I don't know, Jaboticaba or something. Yeah. It grows in the craziest, it almost looks diseased the way it grows, don't you think?
It does.
Yeah.
Have you tried it?
I haven't eaten it. No, I haven't eaten it. Have you?
Yeah, it's really good. It's interesting and it's so fun. I have a friend up here. His name is also Kevin, but he's super deep into rare fruits and stuff. And so he actually will grow them from seed. And, growing a tree from seed is a long-term relationship.
That's another level.
Commitment.
That's absolutely another level. Yeah, that's longer than most people stay in a relationship, honestly.
Yes, it is. So, but yeah. So he's gonna hook me up, I think. I'm gonna try.
Welcome to the Hot or Not episode. Here, we will not be rating our hotness or notness. We will be rating the tools, crops, and more that we're either in or out on, at least for this season. Maybe longer, I don't know. But do you want to kick it off? Is there a tool that you're in love with and maybe one that you're just sort of over?
So every single garden install I do, no matter what I get or what I bring, hori. My absolute favorite is the Bare Bones Ultimate Hori. It is it's an investment, but that thing is so sharp. The shape of it is more pointy than a lot of the other hori-horis I've seen. A lot of hori-horis are a little rounded. So you can actually really hurt yourself.
Yeah.
And it has like a metal back that you can actually kind of pound on if you needed to drive like a little nail in or something. So.
And then a tool you're just sort of over.
And shovel, like what is that for? You know, it's just, it doesn't really do, like my hand can scoop more.
Well, it feels like especially if you chose the hori-hori, that can double as that functionality anyways, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. That's fair. I think one I'm out on right now is it's not a diamond hoe, but it's like the stirrup hoe that you scrape along the surface. Yeah, it's kind of like a hula hoe. Yeah, it's the one that has like a decent amount of metal that is impacting the surface. And the only reason why is because I've yet to find one that can withstand a few months even of weeding without the pressure point bending it, and then the angle's wrong, and then you're more annoyed than you are being helped by the tool.
Yeah, I find like that's kind of the hardest and it's not talked about enough. It's the maintenance of these tools, right? And you've done a good job about talking about how to like refresh your pruners and how to sharpen. And I got that, is it Felco sharpener? So I'm really excited to use that, because before it's like, if you're going hard on pruning and all that stuff, it gets sticky and it rusts. So yeah, tools are really hard.
I think so. Yeah. Tool I'm in love with right now. Let me think about this. I would say actually there's like a short-handled, weird sort of trench axe type thing where it's like an angled triangle that you can hit the ground with. And I've been using that to just chunk out any sort of weed with like a central cluster, because if you hit it right at that like little diamond tip, it'll just pop that weed right out of the ground, like roots and all. And so I'll kind of like put a podcast on, grab like a kneeler thing so my knees aren't wrecked, and just like pop all these weeds out. And it's just very satisfying. So to me, it's like faster than.
It's not the snakehead one, or is that the same one?
It's not the cobra head. It's a little bit wider than the cobra head. The cobra head I still really like though for like ripping out big old chunky weeds.
Yeah.
Or if you just want to make sure you're not going to bend or break it. We've never figured out a way to like break that in any way. So yeah, that one's really great. What about crops? I know we kind of teased this yesterday, but things you love, things you hate.
So another thing that I will never, I shouldn't say never, because if someone wants me to grow it, I'll do it. It is fun. I don't really care to eat it. It just looks really cool, but it takes over everything. I grew one jelly melon, the guano melon plant on an arch, like a full panel arch. It took over the whole thing and kept growing. I've
never grown it successfully yet.
Oh, really?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's probably just neglect. I just don't get it past seed starting, or I accidentally kill it or something. I'm like, I guess I don't really want a jelly melon that bad. But it's interesting to hear because it looks cool, but
so
I guess it does take over.
I actually did not start that one from seed because I was randomly at Laguna Hills Nursery. If you're ever up here, you'll geek out there if you haven't been yet. And I saw a little 4-inch for $4. I said, why not? Let's try this. And it took over just one plant. And funny enough, I had a really great florist friend who she doesn't do like regular arrangements. She does like the really cool wacky looking ones. And she actually wanted the entire string of jelly melons on them. And they look like really pokey grenades almost. And she used that in an arrangement. And it looked really awesome. I just never thought to do it that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, whatever works, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Something that I probably won't grow this year, or something that I would hate. I mean, how do you hate something? Truly hate it? I don't know. But something how about this? I'll go with what I love. I don't think there's going to be a year in which I garden that I will not grow garlic and potatoes. Now, onions, a little bit different story. The bulbing onions, it's just a little more challenging and maybe a little more frustrating. But the garlic is just easy, and potatoes are even easier. And then calorically and flavor-wise, I don't know if there's a better 2 crops in the garden. So to me, I'll always grow those. Something I'm going to skip this year, I probably will grow less squash overall. with the exception of probably pumpkins. I do want to grow some cool pumpkins, but that's probably for a different purpose, maybe Halloween or carving or something. So yeah, those are some things that I'm excited and not as excited about.
Yeah, I am with you. I always forget about the potato because it's the potato and it's not that exciting until it's harvest time, but it is probably the easiest, the fastest, and where we are, we can grow year round.
Year round. Yep.
And I always tell people that if you accidentally forgot the one potato that got behind the counter or you missed it and it sprouted, don't throw that away. Just put it in the dirt and you will have more potatoes in a few months.
Yeah, that sounds good. For me, potatoes, it's just so easy. You can't not grow it. Anything else? I know we talk tools, we talk crops. Any other random thing you're just really liking in the garden right now?
I think I will always grow dragon fruit. It is one of the, I think, easier, especially for our area. It's the easiest to grow in terms of exotic fruits. Doesn't require a whole lot, not daily, not weekly maintenance. And the fruit is just really expensive, but it doesn't taste good even if it is expensive. That's the difference, right? It's I remember you had one video and you didn't like dragon fruit, but then when you tasted the homegrown, you're like, wait a second. There's certain crops lettuce is cool, but a really good piece of lettuce isn't going to be that different than homegrown and organically grown from a farmer's market, right? But when you're talking dragon fruit, I feel like that's one of the biggest difference ones.
Once I learned how dragon fruit was harvested and that it does not ripen after it's been harvested, that's when I understood why everything at the store tasted so bad, because it is a pretty sensitive fruit. If you harvest it when it's ripe and you're trying to transport it, it's much more sensitive than, let's say, a tomato, which of course also gets harvested unripe.
Yeah.
But you can fake ripen or force ripen, I guess more accurately. Tomatoes, you can't really do it with dragon fruit. So yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. Look, it's been great having you on, Chia-Ming. I know that probably a long time coming, so I'm glad, and hopefully we gave you guys a mix of business and some fun plant advice as well. But you kind of have a lot going on. It seems like every day there's more going on with you. So where can people find out what you're up to and anything kind of cool right now you want to talk about?
Yeah, so daily it's, Coastal Homestead on Instagram. And there is my website. If you need some help starting your own garden, I'm your person. And if you're in the Southern California area, I actually was selected to be a designer for the Pasadena Showcase House. And you'll be able to come and visit. To visit the grounds, it's free. And you can go visit the home. That is a ticketed, but it's not too bad, the pricing. And you get to see what all the designers come together and pull together for this org, and it benefits music education. So yeah, you'll be able to come through and walk that entire potager garden that I'm setting up. And
damn,
yeah,
that's cool. That's really cool. Congrats on that. Yeah, well, look, everything will be in the podcast description for you guys if you want to connect with what Chia-Ming's up to. But thanks for coming on the show. It's been really fun.
Thank you.